Look, we'll see. We're doing what's necessary in order to get the best deal for Canadians, and we get the best deal for Canadians, we'll agree to it. If we can't, we won't. I mean, it's that simple. We are making progress as a whole, and look, what we did this week is something that I think we were going to do anyways in the end for the deal. But the other elements are coming together, need to fully come together. We'll work hard. Maybe not this afternoon, to be honest. We're not going to work. I'll be honest. Can I take the afternoon off after my remarks?
I don't get to decide that.
Not a great. Well, the Canadians get to decide. I'm working for all Canadians.
You're not working for me, Mark Carney. So there's our Prime Minister, trying to pretend that canceling the digital service tax is some sort of 4D chess move that he'd been planning all along, despite vehemently defending this policy until a few days ago when Donald Trump told him to cancel it. So much for elbows up. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Johnny Says So. Make sure you smash the like button and subscribe on your way in if you're not already. So guys, the digital service tax is gone. And it's kind of funny because the other day I had just put out a video breaking down what this tax is and why it would be so bad for Canada. And as it was uploading, I just happened to check Twitter and Mark Carney at the 11th hour had canceled the tax. Now, it's not just Mark Carney trying to claim that this is part of some sort of larger negotiation tactic. Members of the legacy media are indeed working overtime to try to spin this as a win for Mark Carney. Let's check it out.
Now is Julian Carragesi, an economist, and former special advisor at the Ministry of Finance. Julian, welcome.
Well, thank you, Renee. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with your thoughts on whether this is a hit or a miss for Canada. Could it mean that we have more trade leverage heading into negotiations with the U.S.?
I think it was a clever tactic by Prime Minister Carney to hold on to this tax to the last minute. And then President Trump came in at the very last minute, the Friday before, and pulled out of the talks. So it bought us a little time, and it gives the appearance that we've made a concession as we head towards this July 21st.
Okay. How does this buy us more time when talks come to a standstill? And also, this is not the appearance of a concession. This absolutely is a concession. And don't get me wrong, it's a concession that we need to make because, as I outlined in my previous two videos, the digital service tax is seriously bad news for this country. It's just a scam, and it's just another cash grab by the Liberals.
First date. So I think there's a mini win there. We also had to back down publicly and give in on this tax, but I think that was a good tactical maneuver by the Prime Minister.
Now, the Parliamentary Budget Office had estimated that tax would bring in more than $7 billion over 5 years. What does the loss of that revenue mean for Canada?
Well, it's coming, that potential loss of revenue is coming at a time where we have incredibly large challenges and pressures on federal and provincial budgets. We've got pressure, obviously, coming right from Washington to boost our defense spending sharply to 5% of GDP. We have pressures from healthcare on transfers payments right across the board. And also there's a sovereignty issue as a sovereign nation. The digital tax, the digital services tax, that's a domestic policy. And so what we're seeing from the Trump White House is they're telling their allies that you have no sovereignty over your domestic policy. We will use leverage in terms of access to our market to cancel any policy that we believe interferes with our business interests.
Now, let's talk about...
Okay. As I pointed out in my previous video, nobody was complaining about an attack on our sovereignty when the Biden administration was lobbying for us to remove this tax. It was a terrible idea, guys, and as much as they like to call this a mini win, that's just doublespeak for a loss. Now, this isn't an attack on our sovereignty at all. If anything, the tax was an attack on Canadian businesses that would have had to pay an arbitrary 3% tax on online advertising in a time when they're already suffering due to the massive inflation and problems in our economy that we've been seeing for the last few years. Now, this wasn't the only elbows down moment for Mark Carney this week. Just today, the CEO of the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association had a meeting with Mark Carney to try to convince him to walk back his ridiculous EV mandate, which would see 100% of vehicles sold in Canada by 2035 be emissions-free.
Has been facing a lot of pressure to rescind this mandate from the Conservatives in the House of Commons. We heard a lot about that during the spring sitting, and also now with the U.S., with the fact that that country is close to passing U.S. President Donald Trump's so-called big, beautiful budget bill, which would phase out electric vehicle tax credits from the Biden era. So many people in the auto sector say if that happens, it just won't be sustainable to keep this electric vehicle, this zero emissions mandate in place here in Canada, especially given the fact that our industries are so intertwined, so dependent on each other. So they really want to see this rescinded as soon as possible. Of course, there's going to be pushback from environmentalists, even maybe from some Canadians who don't want Canada to follow in the same steps as the U.S. Having said that, if this is rescinded, Catherine, it will just join now a list of these Trudeau-era policies that the Carney government, the new Liberal government, has rescinded. So we're waiting to see if that in fact happens.
So if these are just Trudeau-era policies, as she's pointing out, then why is Mark Carney so insistent on supporting them until the bitter end, when it becomes obvious that it would be political suicide to do so? So CBC Watcher put this out. Brian Kingston, president and CEO of the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association, states while heading into a meeting with Carney, the EV mandate itself is not sustainable. The targets that have been established cannot be met, and that will be part of the discussion.
We're just here to talk about the importance of the auto sector and ensuring its continuing success.
Is the EV rebate to debt? Is the EV mandate debt?
We'll be discussing EV mandates, of course, as well as a range of other policies to make sure the sector succeeds.
Do you think that's sustainable, though?
Well, the EV mandate itself is not sustainable. The targets that have been established cannot be met, and that will be part of the discussion.
What will you be asking the Prime Minister for?
I'll talk to you when I get out.
Now, spoiler alert, he does not talk to the media when he gets out. In fact, the government officials and the automakers, they slid out the back door. They, as of tonight anyways, they have yet to talk to the media about this. Now, he's absolutely right about this, guys. The EV mandate is unsustainable. If there's anybody who would be able to tell you how bad this would be for the industry, it would be Brian Kingston. The reality is, EV technology is not nearly at the point where it can be widely adopted across Canada by the entire population, let alone mandated. We just don't have the infrastructure, and I highly doubt we will by 2035. Now, this isn't the only terrible Mark Carney policy that has really started to show cracks this week. David Jacobs put this out on Twitter way back in March. Carney says that Canada must have a carbon tax on heavy industry, otherwise it won't be able to trade with the UK, the EU, or Japan. He is lying. What the EU has proposed is a carbon border adjustment mechanism. If a country's carbon pricing is non-existent or lower than their carbon pricing, they will levy a carbon tariff on your products. That's right, guys. As much as Mark Carney likes to blame Donald Trump for his tariffs and say that Donald Trump is the only person slapping unfair tariffs and trying to control the behavior of other countries, this is what Mark Carney and the European Union are proposing. They're proposing tariffs on people that don't capitulate to their net zero demands. So, they're happy to trade, but they will add a carbon tariff to match their own. Now understand that only 5% of our current merchandise exports go to the EU. Carney wants to turn our economy upside down and make it uncompetitive with our largest trading partner, the United States, in order to satisfy a non-obligatory carbon taxation scheme from a very minor trading partner. Does that sound like a sound economic plan? Clearly, his focus is not on our economy, but on carbon taxation and net zero. He is single-minded and quite frankly dangerous to Canada's economic well-being. This is very well said. Now listen to what he has to say here.
So on the one hand, we have our largest trading partner, as we've been discussing, attacking us, putting tariffs on us. On the other hand, we have the opportunity to diversify trade. Guess what one of the requirements is to diversify trade to the European Union? Guess what one of the requirements is to diversify trade to the United Kingdom? Guess what one of the requirements will be to diversify trade to emerging Asia? Is to have a form of price on carbon.
A form of price on carbon. Big problem with that, though. This just came out today. EU lawmakers agree to exempt 90% of companies from CBAM import carbon tax. The cracks are already starting to show. They are very aware that this move is absolutely going to decimate industry and cripple the economy. But it can get a little bit confusing because they also put this out today. Today, we are proposing to reduce the EU's emissions by 90% by 2040. This is a significant milestone on our road to net zero by 2050. So, obviously, they're just kicking the can down the road. And what this amounts to, guys, is they're going to subsidize industry by paying the carbon credits with taxpayer money. So, it doesn't seem to me like they're actually doing anything to reduce carbon emissions. They're just subsidizing the payments of using carbon. So, like, where is the money going? This is all a scam, guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments, but does this make any sense to you? Now, to further drive home how ridiculous this whole scheme is, here's an older tweet from Ryan Garrettson. Here's Mark Carney talking about his CBAM plan that is already in play in Europe. He's trying to play it off like it's a good thing. It's not. It's a carbon tariff. He wants government carbon policies to sit right in the middle of trade and business within Canada. Right in front of those steelworkers, he basically told them that they are going to be paying for Canadians' heat pumps and solar panels. If elected, he will destroy business and industry to satisfy the globalist carbon scheme. The media is not sharing this for a reason.
As our businesses, as our big industry decarbonize, we don't want foreign steel coming here that's high carbon, right? From Asia, from America. So we will have a carbon border adjustment mechanism that prevents that from happening and puts them in a stronger position. So that's the second. And then the third aspect is we have this carbon market that's in place, and we have an opportunity so that the large polluters, on the marginal reductions that they make, that they can pay for people's climate smart choices. It will end up being a more efficient market for them. The government will stand in the middle and make sure that people have clear incentives, and if we are elected, we will put this in place.
Unfortunately, they were elected. And he likes to say that the government will stand in the middle. No, the government will stand in the way. And also, what's this whole thing he's trying to say about how we don't want dirty steel from Asia? Minister concerned over BC Ferry's construction deal with Chinese shipyard. The hypocrisy is off the charts, guys. BC is importing their ferries from China. So much for Made in Canada. And by the way, guys, China is a country that is slapping us with tariffs, just like the United States. And we don't hear much about that from the legacy media or our ruling class, now do we? So all in all, it's been a pretty bad week for Mark Carney and his globalist policies. Even the legacy media seems to be having a tough time running cover for him. So if there's a silver lining here, I think it's that more and more people soon should start to be waking up to just how badly they've been duped. And that's going to be my show for today, guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments. What was the worst moment for Mark Carney here? And as always, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.